Now, on TalkSport all week, people have been fulminating into their beer about this issue. I hadn't known that democracy and the right to vote was so precious to them, was such a totemic issue to them, that they can get so hysterical, it's the only word for it, about the decision to give the vote to prisoners. Now, one man I confidently expect to be with me on this is the Guardian's prison correspondent, Allison. Eric, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, George.
Were you pleased by the decision? And tell us why, if you were.
I was very pleased. I mean, this ruling from the European Court was handed down in 2004, and New Labour, stalled on it because they're terrified of the tabloid reaction,
Yes.
to giving prisoners the vote. And you're absolutely right. I'm sure the parliamentarians are glad that it's been taken out of their hands, But I know I'm with you in every sense. I mean, there's about 85,000 people in prison at the moment, and all bar a tiny number, maybe 30 or 40, they're going to be released back into society, and the vast majority of those sooner rather than later. And, we want them to come out as better people. We know they've committed crimes, we want them to be rehabilitated. So surely it makes sense that we engage with them while they're in there and that they engage with us. And what better way, to let them know that they're still citizens, they're still human beings. They're not, okay, they've committed crimes, somebody's decided they've got to be locked up for that, but but they're coming back to us. And how we treat them while they're away will have a massive bearing on how they treat us when they come back.
Well, that's just such common sense, Eric. But if you've been listening to our output on this subject this week, and the callers overwhelmingly, you'll obviously be aware that there are huge numbers of people greatly exercised against this. There's a conflation of those who hate all things European, those who hate decisions made in the European Court, those who hate the phrase human rights. And there was once a man on this radio station, I'm glad to say no longer with us, who used to actively lampoon the very idea of human rights. And that's conflating with those who think that prisoners should be on bread and water, breaking stones in a chain gang, wearing a stripy uniform, and generally given as hard a time as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, George, I once had a news editor, good guy, actually, and this issue came up in 2004, and he said to me, what do you think prisoners will think about this? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, what will prisoners think? I said, I have no idea. There's 80,000 of them. They're not, they're not a breed of people. They're just people who happen to be in prison. They've done something wrong. And by the way, when they get the vote, and I'm sure they will, a lot of them, like the rest of the public, some will abstain, they won't bother. Some will vote Tory. I suspect the majority probably will, and some will vote Labour.
Or even further right. It's quite ironic that some of the people most exercised about this are supporters of parties for which some prisoners might well vote.
Absolutely. The Sun's the best-selling newspaper in prisons, I can promise you,
Yeah. Not many Guardian readers, Eric.
There's a few, and there was a few, and there are quite a few, sort of loyal band, and Times readers, just like, prisoners.
It's a cross-section, yeah.
They're a reflection of society. They're people who happen to be in prison.
Yeah.
And some of them have done very, very bad things. Of course they have. I've been in prison. And I was punished and came out. But we've got to try and engage with people, and we've got to try. Look, we know the system fails, George. 60-odd% reoffending rate across the board.
Go back into prison.
Rising to over 80% for young offenders, and bear in mind it costs more to send. I think it costs 3 times as much to keep a kid in custody as it does to keep them,
in Eton.
To keep, a kid to Eton. And yet you've got this ghastly 4 out of 5 reoffend, so we know it's failing. So let's try something different. Let's try and tell them that, you're still citizens.
Tell me, now that I've got you on, Eric, a different subject, what's going on in these prison riots this week?
Difficult. I was talking to a prison officer this morning, and of course their take on the POA is that it's gang warfare and everything else. And there's something in that. You know, you've got young kids in custody. They're part of gangs outside, and the official line, or the official POA line, is that it was a fight between Scousers and people from Sheffield, and then it spilled over. And it spilled over into staff and everything else. But again, when you coop people up and you, you know, George, the whole, you know, sometimes I don't know what sort of world we're living in. You know, you get somebody who's done something wrong, so here's a good idea. Let's lock them up in in a room with other people who've done something wrong.
Yeah, and hope that they come out better.
And hope they come out better. Of course, it's not going to work. You know, you've got people. They're in a place where they don't want to be. We know they're volatile people. People. In some cases, they're dangerous people. You know, and you put them all up, and you coop them in a place, and you lock them up, and things are going to happen. I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised that there aren't more disturbances. To be perfectly frank, I really am. You know, I was very much involved in the Strange Ways. I mean, from outside, because I was outside the prison at the time, but I got very involved in the Strange Ways riot, and I've looked at riots, you know. And again, it's the way we treat people. You know, you have to treat people with respect, but, you know, as to these riots, I don't know. It appears to have kicked off between, young lads from Sheffield and young lads from Liverpool.
Eric, thanks very much indeed. Eric Allison, the Guardian's prison correspondent, kicking off this subject.